Thanks for making it out tonight. The Harvard Financial Analyst Club is excited to host Shkreli for a talk about investing and the pharmaceutical industry. Mr. Shkreli is an investor, an entrepreneur, and a pharmaceutical executive.
And a murderer.
He has founded 2 hedge funds, 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗡𝗦 Capital Management and MSMB Capital Management. He's also founded 2 biotech firms, 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡𝗦 and 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡𝗙𝗢𝗢𝗡𝗔𝗠𝗡 Pharmaceuticals. We look forward to hearing Mr. Shkreli speak, and we hope you guys enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Hi. I know a lot of you don't like me. Wait, I know some of you don't like me. Give me a chance. I think you're going to be shocked at what you hear.
Sorry, pedophile. Nope.
Pedophile?
Yeah.
Maybe you know something I don't. We can talk about that after. I just want to make sure I have a slide clicker or something. Thank you. Like I said, I just gave a speech to Austin. I probably went in there with half the people probably want to tear me to shreds. And I think I walked out with a lot of new friends. So give it a shot, give me a fair shake. You can be as hard as you want on me afterwards. All right.
Can we duo with Lee?
What?
Can we duo with Lee?
Yes, we may do
What did he say?
All right. So I'm going to spend some time talking about my life. I think a lot of people don't know much about me. And this is a street I grew up in Brooklyn. 33 years old. I come from an Albanian immigrant family. My parents were janitors. One is still a janitor. My mom won't quit. We made a deal that if I get married, she'll quit her job finally. But growing up in, I don't know if I'd call it the hood or not, but
No, you wouldn't.
I've had guns pointed at me in this neighborhood, so it's up to you if you want to call it the hood or not. But, irrespective of that, my parents struggled to raise 4 kids with very modest wage, cleaning buildings like this for people like you. So please show some Anyway, I remember playing basketball here, so talk about the hood. I remember playing basketball. I was this tall.
That's like so racist. What are you doing? Like, why
What do you
are
mean?
talking like that?
What do you mean?
You murderer, and all of you who support him.
All right. Maybe I won't tell the hood story, but I do come from the inner city.
Racist.
I do come from the inner city. I don't know why that's racist. I'm perplexed. Anyway, I just want to talk a little bit more about my life. So growing up, and this isn't going to be that fun, by the way. This is a technical, dry discussion. It's pretty nerdy. I don't promise anything. So, with respect to my life, this is a good collage of kind of me from 8 years old to 18 years old. I love programming. A lot of people don't know that, and I now program again. So I took a bunch of time off to work in the hedge fund industry and start drug companies, but for a long time I thought of myself as a computer programmer, and I programmed in BASIC, beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code that Bill Gates, Harvard alum, helped pioneer. And I eventually got into finance, so this is the oldest Yahoo Finance screenshot I could find from 2002, but I would stay up all night, reading and learning about stocks. I kind of got bit by that bug. And I always loved music, and we'll talk a little bit about music tonight. I always loved the future. I think Ray Kurzweil is kind of an idiot now, but at the time I was enamored by Ray and his future prognostications about when machines would become sentient and things like that. I went to a high school called Hunter High School, which sends a lot of, please, which sends a lot of kids to Hunter, to Harvard, and I ended up giving Harvard Hunter the biggest donation they've ever received just a few years ago. I think most people wait for philanthropy till they get a lot older, but I thought it was important to send a statement that where you go to high school matters sometimes as much as where you go to college. So anyway, you know, I certainly was taken aback by math as well. I ended up working for Jim Cramer and his hedge fund. He's another Harvard grad. When I was 16. So I started there on March 1st, 2000, and I turned 17 shortly thereafter. I think my job was mostly getting water for Jim and being fodder for him to curse at me and things like that. But eventually, it was the year this human genome was decoded, so to speak. That's a misnomer, scientifically at least, but that was the year Craig Venter and the government decoded the human genome. And I ended up working for a so-called tiger cub from the Julian Robertson School of Hedge Funds. So those were my first two jobs. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through probably about 4 or 5 different investments I made. How many people are here to hear about investing? Just show of hands. Okay, most of us. Great. I don't want to bore you guys with a dry discussion about investing. So hopefully they'll be a little more interesting to you all. So I'm going to go through probably 5 trades that defined my career in many ways, and they happen to all be money-making trades. I don't want to tell you. I made a lot of bad trades in my career, and it would take a lot more time to talk about that. My lawyer told me that I should not go through those. I would have loved to, and I talked to some of you guys earlier about some of my boneheaded moves over the years, and I'm sure I'm going to make a lot more.
Fraud?
That's a good question. The jury will decide that one, not you. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Well, the jury will decide. I hope you're not on the jury. It requires an open mind and an examination of all facts. But I've started 2 billion-dollar drug companies.
Fraud isn't funny.
Sorry?
Fraud isn't funny. It's not a joke.
No, it's not funny at all. But I didn't commit fraud, which is.
But you did, dude.
Whoa. Do you know how the criminal justice system works? Let me finish. First, hold on. First you get accused, right? then it's determined whether or not the accusations are true or false. No, I didn't.
Why'd you get accused?
I'm not here to talk about my case, and I won't. But the point of the matter is that the jury is out, as they say on that. So, regardless, that'd be nice. We're not here to see you. The case is a fascinating case. The case involves an alleged misspending of $11 million. Anyone who's been through the case in great detail knows that this is a political prosecution. I was never alleged to have taken any money. I paid my investors a fortune. My investors send me Christmas cards. I don't know where the fraud is, nor do my lawyers. I'm not scared at all. That's why I'm here. But again, this is about investing. So anyway, I'm going to go through 5 or 6 of my big trades here that sort of formed my career. Again, here I am looking at this data. This is a pharmaceutical product by a company called Regeneron, and I'm studying this data. I'm 19 years old.
They fund STS now.
I still have zits, and I'm wondering am I going to tell my boss whether I want to do this trade or not? Am I going to get fired, or is he going to do it, and am I going to be a hero? So this is a weight loss drug, and you see the 4 dose groups. This is a small phase 2 trial. And I looked at this, and I determined that this drug was not going to work. And in essence, this data was, I thought, not very compelling. The first thing that I noticed was that the dose groups were very low. Most drugs, this is not enough drug for almost any drug, even if it's very effective, to be useful. Microgram is 1,000th of a milligram, and most drugs are dosed in mgs per kg. This is a therapeutic protein. It's recombinant.
Pharma greed kills.
Yes.
Pharma greed kills. 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 Pharma greed kills.
The presentation goes through why.
Walk out. Walk out. Walk out. Walk out. Walk out. Walk out. Walk out.
Please The way bail works is every time. Thanks for coming. Nobody cares. Goodbye. Take an economics class while you're at it. Right, I'm glad that's over with. But believe it or not, I actually agree with a lot of what these protesters have to say, which is remarkable if you think about it. But it's human nature to not want to hear information counter your theory. And investing, that's often one of the hardest things. You hear information, you're dead set on that stock, you have 10 million in that stock, you convince your boss to buy. There's some kids here that I met earlier that have convinced their bosses to buy 50 or 100 million of a stock. All of a sudden, somebody tells you that your theory is wrong. It's pretty hard to change your mind. Sometimes you have to, and we just saw that on display a little bit. So anyway, I look at this data, and I arrive at the conclusion that the company is a... Jim Cramer points at me and he says, it's your turn, you're going to do biotech stocks.
Shkreli the sexual predator!
How?
Shkreli the sexual predator!
How so?
Shkreli is a sexual
In what way? Don't leave, I want... In what way? Who have I preyed on? Because I'm really curious. I have a tame sex life. I have a girlfriend. we have sex once. It's consensual. Predator? Out of nowhere. So I look at this drug, and it's a recombinant protein made in CHO cells. Big proteins don't enter the blood-brain barrier. The company's hypothesis was that this drug would somehow swim from your IV site to your brain and change some brain chemistry and result in this great weight loss. A lot of weight is controlled, in the appetite centers of the brain. So the company had this hypothesis. The only problem is that big proteins like this don't enter the brain.
Shkreli the racist! Shkreli the racist! Shkreli the racist!
How so?
Shkreli the racist!
In what? In what way?
You were banned off Twitter?
Yes.
Donald Trump was banned.
That's okay.
What?
How am I racist? I'm friends with Lil Wayne. It's not possible. Maybe that was racist. Sorry. All right, back to business. So proteins don't cross the blood-brain barrier. They're too large. The tight junctions in the brain disallow, they're size exclusion barriers that disallow therapeutic proteins to enter the brain. Also, monoclonal antibodies don't enter the brain. So I always get frustrated now when I hear companies that have a monoclonal antibody that's going to enter the brain and hit a brain target and have this great therapeutic effect. But even as a 19-year-old, I tried to always familiarize myself with the basics. And you'd be surprised at how few people in healthcare investing don't know the basics. And I did this for a living, and we talked earlier about some hedge funds that do this. And it is really fascinating that, again, this stuff isn't hard, but it is a little esoteric, and it's easy to skip. But it's important to understand that all molecules have a weight, and that weight is important. So this is the final result of the clinical trial. I convinced Cramer to buy puts in this stock. The stock fell dramatically on this news. The result was a very modest weight loss. These patients are 250, 300 pounds, and you see about a 3-pound placebo-subtracted response, which isn't enough to, I think, merit a drug. I got the trade right. The stock fell dramatically, but I was somewhat wrong in the thesis. You can see that there is a very small, palpable, but small effect size. The p-value is the statistical strength of that size. There is a 3 or 4 pound reliable weight loss. Again, lucky for me, I didn't get fired that day. I was celebrated because the stock fell, and we made several $1 million in the trade. But at the same time, I hypothesized that there was no way this drug could even have any weight loss. So I learned a little bit that day. Here's the little news about the stock falling, plunging 68%. By the end of the day, it was down 70 or 80%. I figured this equation out at some point. It's an important one to know. The idea that goods have prices, goods have volume, and the product of the two is your revenue number. Some people try to maximize, some people try to maximize this, some people try to maximize this, but everyone is trying to maximize that. And for a long time in the 1990s, pharmaceuticals were about maximizing volume. All drugs had a similar price, in fact. And this was actually, believe it or not, a huge problem, because the only diseases that could be treated really were the ones with high volumes, things like cholesterol and asthma and whatnot. So if you had Gaucher's disease or Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I know a lot of people with these illnesses, no drug company wanted to be involved because it was seen that the highest price you could charge for a drug was $1,000 or $2,000 a year, not too far from the price of toothpaste or other consumer products. So it was pretty difficult to rationalize developing and doing a massive undertaking and risk of developing a drug for a disease like that. And obviously, if you're a patient with one of those diseases, and I'll introduce you to some of my friends who are these patients who rely on me. I don't think these protesters understand it, but they rely on me, and I hope every day that the drugs I make will save their lives, that they're relying on me to live, and part of this equation implies that there'll be a high price to recoup that volume. There's 500 patients with a disease called 𝗕CAN, which I invented the first drug for, and we'll describe that in detail in a minute. But this is, some people ask me, how could you be so evil? Where did you learn this from? Well, learn from the best. Warren Buffett, in fact, gloats over and over again about his 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡𝗦 investment. If you know anything about Buffett, you know that 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡 is one of his most prized investments. And Buffett explained to people that every time he raised prices of 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡, he was shocked to see that demand didn't drop. And I remember the moment where I realized that, reading this story, that this is exactly what pharmaceuticals is all about. Demand will basically be constant no matter what the price is in most cases. So I realized this as a kid, and I looked at this stock called 𝗥𝗘𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗦, and this stock really put me on the map. I was working at, now left Jim Cramer's fund, I was working at a so-called Tiger Cup, and my job was to find stock picks, and I loved it, and I worked day and night to do it, and I found this little company called 𝗥𝗘𝗢𝗢𝗦. The stock was at $2 a share, they had 26 million shares outstanding, so they had about a 50 million market cap. They had a little bit of cash and a little bit of debt, but so the enterprise value was more or less the same as the market cap. So the company buys this drug called vancomycin from Eli Lilly, sort of similar to what I did with 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡. They paid a bunch of cash to buy another company's drug that that company didn't want anymore. Most of these big pharma companies, so I think, again, some of the protesters may not realize is, big drug companies like Eli Lilly and Merck, they don't want to own these crappy little drugs like vancomycin or 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡. They want nothing more to get rid of them. And the reason for that is it's expensive to maintain these drugs. So you have to make them, you have to register with the FDA, you have to do all of this work. And it's very painful to ensure that you're making this drug correctly and so forth. And it's not worth it for the tiny, this drug was selling 53 million. This was 10 times more than what 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡 was selling when I bought 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗡. So it's sort of painful to make these drugs. Some companies, one company I bought a drug from, they actually just stopped making the drug altogether. So if you think it's unethical to raise the price of a drug and make sure it's still affordable, it's really bad to just say, I'm throwing this away and I don't care about the 500 people or 1,000 people or a small amount of people that need my drug. I make drugs for millions of people, so screw it. I think that's, I'd much rather save those patients by charging them more, but at least they can get their damn medicine. So anyway, the company bought this drug, and what was remarkable is that the drug was selling $53 million. And in pharmaceuticals, there's almost no costs. So if you think about it, the stock was trading at 1 or 2 times earnings, depending on whether you look at the market cap and the enterprise value, which is really strange. Most of these opportunities like this don't last very long. So I studied this and I thought about it and I said, well, this is unbelievable. You can't buy a stock for 1 or 2 times earnings. We know the S&P trades at 15 times earnings or something like that. So I started buying the stock. I begged my boss to buy stock and I have the right to do that. So I kept buying it and it wasn't going anywhere. So I thought it would be a good idea to tell some of my friends to buy it too. And one fund I talked to said they already owned it. And then I met one friend in my career and I told him to buy it. And I was shocked because my boss would only buy 100 or 200,000 shares. My friend bought millions of shares. And I was pretty happy that he did. But I all of a sudden started asking myself whether I was working for my friend or my boss. So anyway, the stock price didn't respond, which was really frustrating because, the second you buy a stock, it should just go up, right? And obviously that's not how it works. So they reported earnings, and I was waiting, and they had sales of 8 million, which wasn't so great, but they gave guidance that they would have 60 million in sales, so even more than before. And then finally, they announced a quarter of 21 million, which is a run rate of 84 million in revenue. And then finally, the stock started to rise. It went from 250 to 11. I wouldn't normally be happy and sell, but I really wanted to make a splash, and I was studying the price of the medicine. And the price of the medicine was next to nothing. A pill cost about $10, $15. This is a life-saving medicine. So C. difficile C. difficile-associated diarrhea is a nosocomial infection. You get in the hospital. So you go to the hospital for some other operation, and all of a sudden you end up with C. diff, and you die 4 days later. It's a pretty horrific life. It's literally deadly diarrhea. And at the end of the day, the value of the medicine was so much greater than what it was being priced at. And we're going to talk a lot about, are drugs too expensive? How do we fix them? I have a plan that I will be communicating personally to our president on lowering drug prices that I'm very sincere about. If anyone knows how to fix, if you think the system's broken, if anyone knows how to fix it, I think it's me. So in any respect, I ended up getting the company to raise the price of the drug. And demand didn't go down. In fact, demand went up, which was really strange. Again, you normally don't see that. In economics class, I think you learn something a little different. So anyway, the stock kept jumping up, and eventually we sold the stock, and it hit over $20. At that point, my billionaire friend was very happy. The fund I worked at was happy too. But I ended up starting a hedge fund shortly thereafter with my billionaire friend seeing the entire thing. So we'll continue on that. But that was an interesting situation where I faced some reluctance from the company in raising the price, but inevitably they really started raising the price, first with that 25% price increase. And I had to fax a list of similar drugs to the CEO. And I showed him a list of 20 infectious disease drugs and ranked them by price, and his price is at the bottom. And I said, do you really think your drug is this bad that it should be the cheapest on this list? And in many ways, you know, I think I was right, and you know, he certainly was judicious in how he raised the price. I took this out of the slide for the medical school students because it has nothing to do with medicine. There's a company called Thermo Fisher. It's a gigantic life sciences company, and we got approached by Barclays, the investment bank, to buy one of their businesses called basically their fume hood and furniture business. It's a pretty crappy business. Low margins, high capital costs. Why would you ever want this thing? Well, we were told that they were willing to give it away almost. So we got the deck, and there was a problem. The data room, you get these data rooms when you get into these processes. The data room had different data from the slide deck. So we were sitting here wondering, what are we really looking at here? This is strange. You know, normally the numbers should match up. We kept doing diligence, and we put in a term sheet for a $5 million deal. It was contingent on diligence. And they said, you can't do diligence on this company. I said, what do you mean? We said, we want to go to the manufacturing facility. It's in Mexico. They said, you can't do it. We want to close faster than that. And I said, we're about the fastest closers that you'll ever meet, but I got to go down there and kick the tires or something. And so somebody else is bidding, they said, and you know, you either gonna stand by your bid or not. And I said, I'm not bidding $5 million unless I can see this place exists. They sent us pictures in an attempt to satisfy me. So I passed, and somebody else bought it for only $1 million with a promise of 10 more millions of dollars. What ended up happening was strange. There was what they didn't tell us is that there was actually a drug cartel that took over the manufacturing facility. And they basically made it their headquarters. So, this is Thermo Fisher's in the S&P 500. It's a big successful company. But the gangs actually would park in the manufacturing facility, and it was there. They owned it as far as they knew. So they've been in litigation since, but you know, it sort of taught me a little bit. You know, one of the good things about private equity, and I took this out of my slide again at my lawyer's request, but I wanted to talk about some of the mistakes I made. And my first hedge fund failed, partially due to my friend said you're a riskaholic, and I think that's it's obviously a funny play in words, but I do think that there's some truth to it. When you have a mouse and you have $100 million of buying power with one click, it's pretty intoxicating. And you need a lot of patience to be able to say, I'm going to be really sober and careful, not just during the day, but every day for the rest of your life. You're going to take that responsibility really carefully. And even Tom Brady throws an interception. But you know, you have to sit there and be unbelievably patient and careful. And something like that is really, I learned that it was not what was meant for me. So my hedge fund failed, but it's a funny story. I ended up owing Lehman Brothers a bunch of money. They went bankrupt the next year. My friend said, hey, we just made $2 million. I owed them $2 million. Somebody bought that debt, and they said, I saw you in Business Week, so I bought the debt from Lehman Brothers, and I want my money. And I said, this is 8 years later. And so I ended up having to pay them anyway. And I had a few investors that lost money, and I went out of my own pocket to make sure that they were made whole. I think anytime you're given the responsibility to manage somebody's money, it's on you to make sure that they don't get hosed. Certainly, sometimes you can't help it, but nobody should have $100 million with their investors holding the bag. And I think that happens a lot in hedge funds. You know, a hedge fund will be down 10%, but because they're managing $2 billion and they have a 1% fee or 2% fee, they'll pocket $40 million in fees, even though they lost people money. To me, that's wrong. And I've always tried to avoid situations like that.